Welcome to the Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Not feeling a lot better about the Vikings QB situation after yesterday. Is anyone?
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. Bryce Young, high ankle sprain. Is he getting soft benched?
I'm Julia Daniels, Care 11 sports reporter, not Arif Hasan. Sorry, everybody. You get me today. Apologies in advance.
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Monday Squad Show here on Locked On Vikings, streaming live on YouTube. Get our audio wherever you get your podcasts. We're glad you're with us. We do this after the games. We do it Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We've brought Julia Daniels over from the Wednesday show, her Monday Squad debut. It's a whole new world. We've got Julia and Luke sharing their fur babies, with each other, and they're meeting each other for the first time. It's wonderful, this cross-pollination of the Squad Show crews. We've got a lot to debate today, including where the Vikings sit with Carson Wentz and the quarterback situation, defense carved up on the weighty downs, as KOC might say, also an Ivan Pace benching, and we'll look ahead to the Chargers game in like 72 hours on an episode that is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app, use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Julia, yesterday on the Sunday Squad Show, the post-game reaction, Luke and I were there, and we yelled at each other. We yelled loudly at each other because Luke Braun wants to shoot Carson Wentz into the sun. And I was trying to be a little more tempered and reasonable about it and say, well, Luke, let's try to have some perspective on this, right? We've seen worse quarterback performances. We've seen Kirk Cousins absolutely not know which way was up. We've seen Sam Darnold throw a zillion picks in Jacksonville. Let's try to calm down about this. I couldn't calm him down. Do you feel, Julia, like many, that this should be the final straw? This should be the end of Carson Wentz and the Carson Wentz experience?
Yes. I think yesterday's performance was atrocious, especially for a guy who has played at the level that he's played at before in his career, is a veteran. I understand he's been playing backup for a while now, but the mistakes that he made yesterday were just they were so boneheaded that there's no excuse. You have been in this offense long enough, and especially at your age and at this point in your career, where the mistakes were just dumb. I mean, these were honest mistakes, balls getting tipped, these kind of things. We might be a little bit more understanding, but it was horrible decision-making skills or just trying to be a guy that he's not. Carson Wentz is not the guy that can just rocket launch somewhere and it's perfectly placed. The accuracy is right there for a receiver. It doesn't happen for a guy like this. It hasn't happened for Carson Wentz in a very long time. And I think, honestly, I tweeted out, is it Max Brosmer time at this point? Because I think the guy has better decision-making skills than what we saw yesterday. Give him a chance. If JJ McCarthy's not ready yet, put Max Brosmer out there. I mean, I've been covering him for 2 years now because I covered him when he was with the Gophers. His on-field processing skills are so good, and it has to do with the fact that he's worked with Quincy Avery since he was 12 years old. And this is a guy that has trained elite quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, all these guys. And so I just think give Brosmer a chance if JJ McCarthy's not ready, because it can't be worse than what we saw yesterday, right?
That is a great take, Julia. We also have a special guest waiting in the waiting room, and we have a graphic for that. Let's play it, and we'll find out who it is.
Let's see who was lucky enough to get invited to today's party. It's time to meet our guest of honor.
A new graphic.
Wow.
You're muted, Sam. You're muted.
He supported him his entire career. He has supported him in his time with the Vikings, and he has backed him the whole way. He writes for Wide Left Substack. His name is Arif Hasan.
Good morning, Arif.
Okay, I don't like any of
Good
this.
morning. Welcome.
Good.
Nobody likes any of what's going on today.
No.
Welcome in.
No. Hi.
Arif,
Hello.
I assume that you are backing Carson Wentz after yesterday's admirable performance and the comeback effort that he displayed, the wheels and mobility that he showed on a pair, not one, 2 third-down scrambles for first downs, and got robbed on a TJ Hawkinson almost touchdown pass. I mean, come on.
Of course.
The defense is what let them down.
Obviously.
Carson Wentz brought them back.
As a longtime supporter of Carson Wentz, I was disappointed to see. Come on, man.
Okay, but you do have to admit, I'm exaggerating, but you have to admit you have been in the camp of Wentz is a better option than McCarthy at this point. Where do you stand now?
I mean, obviously, Wentz played so poorly that it reopens the conversation. But I think the evidence that we had going into this game was that Wentz was performing better on both play-by-play rate and in an aggregate sense, right? And here's the thing. I think that, when we take a look at how McCarthy has played, I think it's long enough ago that we forget how bad it was. Like, we remember, oh my God, all 7 of those quarters were bad. He only had one good quarter. And again, production metrics aren't, 100% useful. Traits-based analysis will do a little bit more for us here. But it is important to remember that even from like a lot of production metrics, on an EPA per dropback basis, and this is not an argument that he should continue starting, this game was still better than either of McCarthy's games. Like, he still produced more, right? That's how poorly McCarthy was playing. When we take a look at some of the traits that we're really concerned about with McCarthy, right? When he drops back to pass, is he dropping back at a landmark that allows the offensive lineman to perform, right? That's one of the things. I don't know if he's still doing that, right? But even in a game where Wentz was out of sorts, he didn't lose where he was dropping back to. He didn't drop back to an island out of nowhere unless Blake Randall was, launching the ball 22 yards behind him. I don't think Wentz played well enough that this conversation needs to continue happening in the direction that it's happening. But I do think that we've forgotten that McCarthy played so poorly that we've missed kind of the distance between where Wentz had been playing and when McCarthy had been playing, right? The only reason that you'd play McCarthy, or the only reason that you play Wentz instead of McCarthy, is because it would be clear, right, that he gave them a better chance to win and stuff like that. And from a traits perspective, I don't think that he didn't do a very good job of that. Like, on the passes that were completed, they were still inaccurate. On the passes that were not completed, they were grossly inaccurate. He took 3 touchdowns away from Jordan Addison on one drive, right? Like, you can't really justify playing that guy in that situation. Greg Olsen was losing his mind at how often he missed CJ Ham, which is such an interesting thing for an analyst to talk about. But that's why Greg Olsen's the best, right? Missing the clear first player in a progression who is also the easiest throw, who is also open, is egregious. You can't be doing that. Did McCarthy do that? Yeah. But I think that if you're playing Wentz, the goal is that he is definitely not doing that. And he certainly did that this week. So I just want to put that out there, that like Wentz produced more than McCarthy has. In a different, offensive environment, the plays that, he's being subject to are a little bit different. Having Christian Darrisaw, having Jordan, like all of that is an important piece of context. But I don't think it's such a slam dunk for the argument that Wentz should have continued playing. Not that it mattered. I think this was all an injury decision anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, and we can get into that. But it's an upside play with McCarthy because we've seen now 4 games of Carson Wentz, and I'm not sure that there is a much higher level to it, Braun. And I think that, to Arif's first point, the chains did move yesterday. The chains did move, but there was so much inaccuracy. Like, there was so much left on the bone with the throws downfield, which we said on yesterday's reaction show. 3 of 9 on deep throws, Carson Wentz. 5 of 6 on deep throws, Jalen Hurts. That's your ball game. Jalen Hurts, not saying there is a comparison to be made, but you see the gap between elite quarterback play and what the Vikings threw out yesterday. I mean, I'm not going 100% all in. Carson Wentz cost the Vikings the game solely. I think there's actually a few factors here between the offensive line, defense, melting down at key times. But have you had a chance to kind of rewatch or reevaluate at all? Bron, has your opinion changed?
No, because the last time we talked was like 16 hours ago. But
hey, a good night's sleep. You said you had a good night's sleep. You know,
I did that
That's crazy.
Instead of waiting for the tape to drop at like whenever in the middle of the night. But so I guess there's two things here. One, the chat is all over, which is that while the first two games of McCarthy were very poor statistically, expecting it not to improve for a 22-year-old is, and then.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Is very distinct from 10-year vet Carson Wentz making the same mistakes he did 5 years ago. Like, we have no reason to believe Wentz will ever improve or that any more Wentz games will be any different from this one. It's always been like this, and it always will be like this all the way until he's a Houston Roughneck. But the second thing is, I think with distance, I feel the exact opposite of Arif. I think with distance, we have come to only look at, hey, what was the EPA on that? And forget that so much of those games was not McCarthy's fault. Some of it was, but there was so much of those games that was not on McCarthy or that was not quite as bad as it statistically looked.
Yeah, the Bears game
this game was so Wentz's fault. It was so like that pass just didn't go where it was supposed to. He just didn't throw to the open guy. Like it was so everything was working out for you except you screwed up. So like.
I do want to contest
those contexts matter.
Sentence. Everything was working out for you except you screwed up, right?
I'm thinking CJ Ham was wide open for a touchdown, and then Addison, like
I agree. Okay, the receivers probably played better in this game than I've seen them play. And obviously, the Vikings have some of the best receivers.
Yeah.
In the NFL, so having them play at this level and seeing what happened, that's so disappointing, right? I don't want to contest that. The level, so like we've been talking about like missing Christian Darrisaw, right? And that obviously is really important, right? That's a significant element to our evaluation of McCarthy, where Wentz has Darrisaw for most games, and McCarthy didn't have him, right? It is important that having the backup center in there for Wentz has egregiously complicated this portion of the sample too. I don't know that McCarthy would have done that much better in this game, which again is not a reason that he shouldn't start going forward, but rather the number of pressures that Wentz received in under 2.5 seconds or even under 2 seconds was one of the largest by volume number of pressures we've seen in any NFL game this year. So in under 2.5 seconds, he had 9 pressures appear, which ranks 7th of all quarterback games this year, right? In under 2.5 seconds. And almost all of them were up the middle. Blake Brandel, 2 of them were Donovan Jackson by my count. So the fact that he immediately was under pressure because of what Jalen Carter was doing to Blake Brandel, which again,
we'll get to Brandel in another comment or in another section.
No, that's fine.
My comments for later.
No, that's fine. What I'm saying is, you can't say this is all Wentz. I think that is disingenuous.
No, it's
right?
I said on the postcast that it was all Wentz and Brandel. But everybody else was Ribson. Yeah.
I mean, Brandel was so egregiously bad. I don't see McCarthy succeeding there. Obviously, I don't see Kirk Cousins succeeding there. I don't see any number of Vikings quarterbacks succeeding there, right? But I do want to point out that as we talk about like the different levels of types of offenses we're dealing with, the different types of supporting cast we're dealing with, that I do think that Wentz was dealt the worst hand from an offensive line perspective of any of these past 6 games. This was the worst offensive just because of Blake Brandel.
From an offensive line perspective, but not having Addison, who he
and obviously having Addison playing at the level that he was playing at, which I think he was playing better than he did in the previous 2 games. Having CJ Ham available, which like always sounds kind of like a meme, but that actually he was genuinely
it matters. It super matters.
Yeah, it super matters. He played well in this game. I thought Jalen Naylor being available, Adam Thielen, he showed up. That was awesome, right? I thought Justin Jefferson. Yeah, he got one. Go for it. Go him, right?
Need it in London.
But like I thought Justin Jefferson was streaking open on a more consistent basis, which is saying a lot given how good he is. Like there was a lot there, and obviously the way that Addison was playing was that like he should have had 40 more yards and a touchdown or another touchdown. Like he was incredible, right? And so not having access to that for McCarthy is huge. But I do want to point out, like, it's not as if it was uniformly better for Wentz in this game. Brando was playing so horrendously that I'm actually kind of glad that McCarthy didn't get exposed to whatever was happening there.
It was this last 4 games. Like, when you looked deeper into the first 2, you knew how the next 2 would go and how he would maybe have some fun scramble plays. And it's not, he's not a potato. Some things are good, but that there would be enough bad in there that it's going to be hard to continuously win games. And I go back to at the very beginning. I think it was after the Bengals game when we were talking about this, and it was the like main point Arif was making was about, like, you have to do what is best for this season of the Vikings, right? Like, do what gives them the best chance to be a playoff contender. And at this point, chasing the upside of McCarthy feels like the only actual winning path, and the rest just goes 6-11, and you quietly get forgotten by Thanksgiving.
Julia, I'm sure you've learned in the last 10 minutes, you just got to jump in and cut these guys
This
off.
is totally different than what I'm used to. Yeah.
They will go back and forth for the whole 60 minutes. I want Julia to bookend this segment with your just quick twitch Thursday night. Let's say that McCarthy is still on his path back to 100%, but he's progressing. Maybe not. He's not there. Carson Wentz kind of has his, when he was wincing yesterday a couple times after hits he took. He might not be 100%. Would you play the Max Brosmer card if KOC feels it was really that bad upon rewatch? Like, how would you handle this decision coming up?
Well, how would I handle it? Yes, I'd put Max Brosmer in because I'm a Max Brosmer fan. However, do I think that's going to happen? No, I think that if I were to bet on this right now, I would say JJ McCarthy is going to start on Thursday. I think also Carson Wentz dealing with this shoulder injury of some sort. Maybe they're going to decide that that's a bigger injury than the high ankle sprain that JJ McCarthy is working with. I know when I was listening to Kevin O'Connell talk about JJ McCarthy's high ankle sprain, it sounded to me, because he talks in riddles, he's like a Cheshire cat, he said it's something along the lines of they're comfortable with where McCarthy's at, McCarthy's not comfortable with where he's at in terms of the pain that he feels with the high ankle sprain, which is kind of my interpretation of how he talked about it. So maybe these next 48 hours are about getting him comfortable with the pain, maybe giving him a steroid shot in his ankle or something like that to get him out there. But I think it's going to be JJ McCarthy on Thursday after this performance. And also, you never get a lot of emotion out of Kevin O'Connell, but it seemed post-game yesterday that he was hinting at the fact that he puts a lot of the responsibility of the loss on Carson Wentz. So we'll see.
I just think you gotta get wins in a 17-game season. You can't use the short week as an excuse not to start the better quarterback if health is not an issue. And if I don't think he's going to voluntarily play Brosmer. I don't feel like that's going to happen, putting an undrafted rookie in there. But if it comes down to McCarthy being 85-90%, I think that's a move. If you feel like Carson Wentz was really that culpable, I think if you're Kevin O'Connell, you got to make that move. Who cares about the short week? And just see and roll the dice and chase the upside. And I think that's certainly going to be a big decision. They get like one practice. They get like Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then a walk through Wednesday. There's not a lot of time to get ready for this. And knowing the way they operate, my gut says that they'll stick with Wentz. I feel like they will stick with Wentz. More on that, I'm sure, as the show goes on. We're also going to get into the defense surrendering huge plays on huge downs and allowing a perfect passer rating to Jalen Hurts. That's next on The Squad Show. It's brought to you by our new partners at Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS, SaaS, promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, finance, all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, finance operations as one, Just fill in the gaps in your software stack. Rippling can do it all. It's so easy to use. Seriously. Gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, everything they touch. Right now, get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. RIPPLING.com/LockedOnNFL. Rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. We're also presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks puts you in a position to make decisions, and when you're right, you cash in. You get paid. Don't miss the excitement of football with Prize Picks by your side. It's fun. It's simple. It's easy. You're doing more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And there's even flex plays, too. So you don't have to be perfect. You can go 4 out of 5 and still cash, still profit. I always appreciate that. You could have taken less than on Saquon Barkley yesterday and cashed. I unfortunately had more. Went the wrong way for me. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Squad Show rolling on. The everydayers know the schedule. It's the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota on Tuesdays. Care 11 Squad Show on Wednesdays. Julia will be back there. And on Thursday, we've got Luke Inman rejoining the Squad Show with Arif and Luke Braun. We get into the defense now, which gave up only 21 points in this game. Pick 6, obviously, for Philadelphia. Only 21 points allowed. I'm lamenting a couple third downs, of course, and a couple fourth downs. Fourth down bomb to Brown on Metellus. Bad news. 3rd and 13 conversion on the scramble. Just a disgusting play by Jalen Hurts. Disgusting throw. Can't even be mad at Jeff Okudah, who defends well for like 6 seconds and then has to deal with that kind of play. And then, of course, the floater. I think the All-22 showed that Hurts' throw actually scraped the roof of US Bank Stadium on its way down. That was a rainbow.
Without hitting any of the bafflers. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Like,
I had to
sit. The wire didn't get in the way. Like, I had to sit and I knew for 5 full seconds while the ball was in the air. Oh, that's caught. Game over. Yeah. Yep. Demoralizing. So, Luke Braun, give me your defensive day after take. Again, points allowed, fine. Run defense, fine. Pass defense exposed.
Run defense, great.
Yeah. So I want to watch some of those key plays because it was one. I think Arif, in your gamer, you illustrated this really well. That it was really a game defined by a few explosive plays and then otherwise playing really well, which is kind of what you get with a good run defense, and then the pass defense gives up a bunch of chunks, right? And so I kind of want to take another closer look at those. But right now, my going theories: the blitzes didn't get home. They just the Eagles kept enough people in the protection, but that means you have to, against a 6-man or a 5-man coverage, you have 3 routes. You have to approach that differently to get somebody open when you only have 2 or 3 guys going downfield. And I think what they did was really attack the way the corners have to play. This is what got Isaiah Rodgers jumping on things. Was like when he's in quarters, or they're like Palms version of 6-man Palms, whatever they call that. He wants to drive down on like the flat and take a bubble screen, go beat a blitz beater basically. And the Eagles, I think, got him biting on a lot of that stuff, and then with him over the top, or it was just man coverage on the back end, and the blitz didn't get home, so there was 7 seconds, and Jeff Okudah can't cover that long. So I think I look at it, and we'll get to the personnel stuff, but I look at, Ivan Pace not on the field and your blitz didn't get home. Dallas Turner not on the field and your blitz didn't get home. You had 4 D tackles on the field and your pass rush can't chase Jalen Hurts. I think they made big personnel mistakes in this one, and I don't really know if they understand the ins and outs of their depth chart on either side of the ball.
The pressure rate was about half of the blitz rate, which is not great. Jalen Hurts, when he had to get the ball out fast, was super ordinary, like 6 out of 9, 64 yards on throws less than 2.5 seconds. But Julia, just not enough taking away of the football this year. Like this is arguably the biggest difference between 24 and 25 is that I think they had 14 takeaways at this point last year.
Yes,
right now you have 7. You have 7 right now. 5 of those against the
They're
Bengals.
all the Bengals, yeah.
And one of them was like a hook and ladder botched play by the Bears on the last play of that game, which barely counts. So other than like one crazy game, you have essentially one takeaway for the rest of the season so far. Like that. I'm hoping there's like a regression in the other direction where they actually start taking the ball away, because it's really hard to beat a good team if you go -2 in the take give.
Yeah, but also I think what would happen too is the entire momentum of the game would change when you had these takeaways, right? Everybody's fired up at that point, and so they capitalize off that. That was something that they've done for 2 years now with Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. I do think, credit has to be. You have to give credit where credit is due and say, I think Jalen Hurts is arguably the best quarterback that they've faced this season so far. And it was obvious too. I mean, this team was like the top ranked or next to the top ranked passing defense in the league headed into this game. Maybe they spent too much time this week listening to everybody tell them to fix their run defense. And because they know Saquon Barkley's coming in, maybe he's not having the best year, but you still got to prepare for a guy like that. And then maybe they went too balanced in that direction and didn't cover the way that they should have. Also, I just think, Jalen Hurts comes in and has this like almost career game too. And this is a guy that, and I talked to you guys about this last week. I said, I was a freshman when Jalen Hurts was a freshman at Alabama. I watched the motivation when things would go wrong. And it's something I have never seen. It's like he's like a psychopath, basically. When things are going wrong for him, it's like more motivating than I've ever seen anybody be motivated as a loser before. He loses 2 games headed into this, and he's going to come back better than you've ever seen him, because he's like I know he also talks in riddles and has all his movie quotes that he has all the time.
He does.
But he genuinely, and this is somebody that I've covered since I was 18, he lives and breathes that. That's how he's literally like a movie character in that sense, where it's like, it's ridiculous in our eyes. At first, everyone's like, wow, this guy's so awesome. And then you're like, wait, he actually believes every single thing that he says. He's just that type. Like, and I was telling you guys last week, I watched him get benched in the national championship game, come back, and the next year he sticks around and he brings us back in the SEC championship. I mean, it's something that he continuously does. It's a pattern in his career where things get bad for him. He puts his head down and all of a sudden he has career performances, and you lose 2 games headed into whatever team he's going to play. And I think he's going to come in prepared like he did in the Vikings defense. Like, what do you do at that point? You have this guy, he's like a literal psychopath, like I said. And so I think, yes, obviously some holes were exposed on the Vikings defense, but you also have to give credit to the fact that Jalen Hurts played lights out. And there was no way, just based off of the season that he's had this year, that you could expect him to come in and have the game that he had yesterday too. So I think obviously this gives the defense some film. Maybe the positive that they'll take out of this is, hey, we have some things that we can fix here, and now we've seen them on film and we can move on from there. But I think Jalen Hurts, you have to just like give him his flowers in terms of that performance too. I think it was insane.
Yeah.
Something wild headed into this one. Jalen Hurts' FanDuel totals were like significantly below Wentz's. Like, FanDuel thought Hurts was like not gonna have a good game, and I was going over that on Locked On Vikings on the Friday show. Like, the all of the totals were low, all of the like expectations seemed really low. Like, things were really, really down for the Eagles, and yeah, what a team to get your get right game against.
It felt also like the get right. Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
I mean, this is a guy who spent years every other year where somebody would say he can't throw the ball. He's just a glorified running back in the quarterback position. And then he comes out and has
And then Lincoln Riley fixed him.
Yeah.
Is he that guy? Does he just
He's
need like some spite?
Cartesian. Come on, guys.
Yeah, it felt like the get right was going to be Barkley. It felt like the get right was going to be, we're going to reestablish the ground game. We're going to give it to Barkley 20 times. He's going to go for $120 and 2. And it wasn't that at all. It was Jalen Hurts improvising his way to a career performance. Almost none of it rhythmic. All of it created by second opportunities, getting out of the pocket. And And the Vikings not having a particularly effective pass rush didn't help Arif.
Yeah, I think that's actually primarily it. I mean, like you mentioned, Sam, and I was looking at it under 3 seconds because I was like, well, let's give the defensive line like a little bit more, or let's give the pass rush a little bit more leeway and take a look at it at 3 seconds instead of 2.5 seconds. And this was the second worst success rate that he's ever had under 3 seconds, right? So if he had to get rid of the ball 2.5, 3 seconds, 1 second, whatever, this is the second worst success rate this year. Right, it was his third worst performance in production, like EPA per dropback. But if you take a look at it over 3 seconds, it would not shock you that conversely, this was not just the best performance that he's had this year. This was the single best over 3 second performance any quarterback has put together this year, except, of course, 2 Sam Darnold games. That's
of course you had to twist that number.
Yeah.
Stop.
But and Sam Darnold was playing against like the Saints, right? Like don't worry about that. But that I think is the difference, right? Because we're talking like after the game, they're talking to like Josh Metellus and Isaiah Rodgers and like, hey, Josh, like, can you tell me what happened on like, this enormous play? I don't think he gave it the 79. I think it was Isaiah Rodgers gave it the 79 yarder. But like, that one-on-one against AJ Brown early in the game. And, he's like, ultimately, that's on me. We know that he's a scrambling quarterback. He's going to buy some time and get some out there. It's on me. And he's taking personal responsibility. He's pointing out that this takes a little bit of time. But he's taking personal responsibility. And I looked at that throw. That throw took 4.6 seconds. That's entirely on the pass rush. We can talk about like, oh my God, I can't believe that they drew up a scheme where Josh Metellus is up against AJ Brown. That is what like terrible design that you end up in that spot. Like, are they getting like McVay, like the 2018 McVay game where Anthony Barr was just living in a torment nexus, right? Is it like that? And no, that play worked. Like, Josh Metellus was doing his job, but it's really difficult to ask any defensive back to cover almost any receiver, right? Unless it's like wide receiver 5 or 6 on a depth chart for 4.6 seconds, right? And that continuously happens. You take a look at these big plays. I think there was one big play under, which was unfortunately, I think the 3rd and 9, the 45-yarder. One big play or under that. Maybe there were 2 big plays under that, but like all of the other big plays were over 3 seconds. And so to me, that's a pass rush issue, right? And the pass rush win rate was low, so it wasn't even just Jalen Hurts was getting out of pressure, which he was. Like, once the pressure arrived, he was getting out of it, right? But the pressure was late to arrive. This is one of the lowest rates of fast pressures that we've seen in the game. It was a nice little sea of contrast between how the Vikings and the Eagles were performing. The only guy that was getting consistent fast pressure was actually Jonathan Allen, which is nice. I'm glad that, somebody that you signed
Roll
and
Tide.
paid a lot of roll tide. Somebody that you signed and was giving a lot of money did that. But like after that, it wasn't much. I think Jonathan Bernard had like an 8% win rate when for the year, his win rate's at like 20%, right? Like it was difficult to win off the snap. Right. It was difficult for the blitzers were doing well. Eric Wilson did really well. Harrison Smith did really well when they're pass rushing, but you can't live like that. And Flores knows that, which is why they went out and got, an additional pass rusher in the draft in Dallas Turner, why they went out and got additional defensive tackles, right? You can't live where your only pressures come on the blitz. And that wasn't happening. When they got that pressure, they weren't able to, to conclude, to bring it home. So I think that was primarily it. And I think that's the reason that you're in this spot where the Vikings have a really good success rate on defense, right? From play to play to play to play, they were better than most defenses were against most teams were this year. And then 5-6 plays were enormous, huge, explosive. And you give up those big plays, not because, your cornerbacks aren't playing well, but because you're not finishing. And finishing is both a product of, how the defensive line, offensive line matchup is going and how that quarterback is doing in terms of like escaping, right? I don't want to like super diminish how well Jalen Hurts played, but I think it is notable that he didn't win in structure at all. This wasn't like, his 2 Super Bowl performances, some of the best quarterback play I've ever seen. It wasn't like that. It was a lot like the offense for the Eagles was constantly out of rhythm. They never really kind of got their footing, and he just kind of maneuvered their way into it, and the Vikings let it happen. And so am I concerned about how this is going to, what this portends for the defense going forward? Probably not. I don't like they are really good at preventing explosive plays. And when you're really good at preventing explosive plays and you produce a success rate like this, down the line, that's going to look good. But that doesn't mean they secretly played well in this game. They didn't. I think this is primarily a pass rush problem. And I think initially, first read, it felt like a coverage problem. And I don't think it was.
Yeah, and the pass rush has been good and probably will be good, especially if you get Van Ginkel back. Before we move on from the defense, I just want to chuckle at welcome to the NFL, Tyler Batty. We're going to set you down horizontally.
Oh my God.
And it's like, imagine being like trampled on like the old school Black Friday deals, people trying to get their way into the Walmart doors and you fall down and take. And
hey kids, back before Amazon,
it's 2012. We're going to have you plank.
Welcome back from IR. Here's a hydraulic press. Please put your neck in it.
Just lay down and get fallen on by about, I don't know, 3,000 pounds of human weight.
The Vikings think it worked. They think the refs got the call wrong, by the way.
In Tyler Batty's defense, have you guys seen how big that guy is? He's huge.
How big can you be when you're comfortable with Jonathan Allen jumping on top of you? I feel like
it's just funny that he was the sacrificial lamb. Like the new guy, like we're going to initiate
Tyler
Batty.
Batty's bigger than Jonathan Allen.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
They activated him just to be the tush push scapegoat.
Great beard. Get on the ground.
At any rate, yeah, that was it. That was innovative. I guess it kind of worked. Like they almost stopped him once, and then they committed a penalty on the other try.
They're confident that it did work, which you'd always take players with a grain of salt on like how successful they were on play.
We'll find out. We'll find out if other teams copy it.
Yeah, they kind of have an argument, but it's such a mess of bodies that it's not reviewable.
No, they need to put like an O lineman in there. That's what they need to do.
Yeah.
We don't really got any of those to spare, if we're being
honest. Maybe a team that does.
They should activate Taki Taimani for this.
Put Randall.
Please activate Taki Taimani.
Put Randall in there. Vikings fans are like, put Randall down there.
Yeah, whoever had the most pressures last week has to go down there now.
That's great. It's like it's like the opposite of the Notre Dame. You get to wear the number 1 jersey. It's like, you get to wear the human fulcrum jersey.
The Vikings bench Ivan Pace. What does that mean? We talk about it next. And today we're brought to you by Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. JJ McCarthy's learning his footwork right now. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel that Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Think about that for a second. Mazda, move and be moved. Julia, we do a segment on the show called Nerdy Stat of the Day. I didn't prepare you for this, but you can research one if you want while the rest of us chime in with our nerdy stat.
Analytics fans rejoice. It's time to get educated.
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
With the Nerdy Stat of the Day.
Nerdy Stat of the Day, Carson Wentz. Expected completion percentage. If you haven't looked it up, what do you think it was, Luke Braun?
Expected?
I'm sorry, the differential. So over
completion percentage over expectation.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. I want to say I did see something like this. It was like -6.
Okay, this is next gen is my source, by the way.
Next gen. I feel like I saw this, but I might be remembering a different quarterback's game.
No. I think you're close. I think it's like negative. I don't know. I'm gonna spit out a oddly specific one that I don't think is correct. -5.34.
Shockingly, it is a positive number.
Excellent.
0.8 above expected.
So he hit the expected.
Yeah, which doesn't that surprises me quite a bit. And I know
there's a lot of little fake completions in there.
Well,
I mean, some of the misses were like deep bombs that don't have high expectation.
Also, one thing to note is that the next gen version of completion percentage over expected accounts for pressure. Like that is an element there.
So the pick six wouldn't
Yeah.
count.
Whereas if we use like running backs don't matter. If we use theirs, their expected completion typically just uses did you throw right, left, or center, and how far downfield you threw. I just looked it up though. It's not that different. It's plus 0.5. No, it's minus 0.5. So it's like a difference of like 1% or 1 percentage point, I should say. Is EPA per play 0.0. Perfectly balanced.
Perfectly balanced as
Even
always.
Steven. Giveth and taketh away. Arif, give me a nerdy stat. You kind of just did, but you can.
I feel like I've given a couple.
You have. You can fall back on that. A lot of good stuff about time in pocket.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. He had like 15 dropbacks over 3 seconds out of let's see, 26 dropbacks. Let's do math right now. So 58%, 57.7% of his dropbacks were over 3 seconds. That's what in the world is that? I don't even know how to interpret that. That's crazy. There can't have been that many quarterback games this year that was like that. That's like a Justin Fields stat, except he was good.
That's outstanding. Ron?
So of course the perfect passer rating is going to get a whole bunch of headlines. There's another one hidden here in the stats, which is when targeting just Byron Murphy, also perfect passer rating.
Ooh.
3 for 3,
really?
44 yards and a score.
What was his QBR, by the way? Did we see that? Was it like 90?
92.2.
Wow.
Or that's XQBR on Ben Baldwin's website, but I feel like I don't know what that is. But
It correlates
I'm sure it's
pretty
better.
tightly. We can find out on ESPN in a second.
I'm sure there's some adjustment he's making that you probably want him to be making.
So, Julia, now that you know the standard for a nerdy stat, would you like to chime in with one, or well, you could also just say whose stat was the nerdiest? You can also give us that.
Probably Arif's, but I do have one.
Let's go.
All right, let's go.
Well, we'll see how nerdy we actually think this is. I found this. The Eagles set a 100th percentile EPA per pass play in this game, meaning their passing game was as efficient as possible in that metric.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
That track. That's good. That's exactly. If you use the phrase EPA in your nerdy stat, you're set.
Yeah, that's like the cheat code to this one.
That's a nasty one.
That's brutal.
Ooh.
Julia, Ivan Pace benched. This is maybe the one kind of like, self-scout they did over the bye where they made a personnel move.
Yeah.
Eric Wilson gets the start. Ivan Pace out. Your thoughts on kind of the Ivan Pace trajectory after 2 very effective years and 5 games in, they pulled the plug.
I mean, he missed more tackles in the first 5 games than anybody else did on the entire team. And then you have Blake Cashman come back. Eric Wilson, their stats, technically Ivan's stats are better than Eric Wilson, but Eric Wilson's been more effective defensively for this team than Ivan Pace has been. I mean, in all honesty, he's been kind of invisible out there. You see him, but you don't hear about him. And that's been a change this year. And honestly, they don't need him if they have Eric Wilson and Blake Cashman out there. Do I think the defensive performance was great? No, but I don't think it would have been better had Ivan Pace been out there. And so I was not shocked to see him benched when Blake Cashman comes back from that hamstring injury, especially when you have a veteran like Eric Wilson on your team. So, no, not surprised necessarily, just based on how the season has gone for Ivan Pace. I mean, I hope he gets his get back. I think he's a go-getter. What is he? He always said you can't get him to say anything to you when you ask him a question. All he says is just like, I got that dog in me, but maybe the dog.
He's ranked 51st out of 58 linebackers on PFF. He's not going to get any bigger. I felt like he was able to use his size to his advantage in his first couple of seasons. Like he had this low center of gravity. He could almost go under blocks and get to ball carriers.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that this year. Maybe an unsustainable approach. Maybe it's not something you can count on, rely upon.
He has been doing that and penetrating and getting into space, and it's just he's struggled to make tackles in space, which unfortunately, because of what's happening up front, a tackle in the B gap is a tackle in space, and he's been struggling with that.
Arif,
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I think the one thing I do want to point out is that Eric Wilson has been playing really, really well, just like really, really well. And I think, like, obviously, you don't bench a player when you've got like a sample of these two players, both competing at the same time, unless one of them is in the other. So in a sense, I'm saying nothing because we know that. But I think one thing that we talked about over the last couple of weeks is that Eric Wilson is playing really well as a kind of a standard linebacker. He's playing above what we typically expect a starter to play, which is an outstanding moment for him, given how poor he was in run defense when he was previously with the Vikings, then with the Packers. But like, he does the things you ask a linebacker to do, and not much more, which is fine. But when you pair that with someone like an Ivan Pace, right, who requires somebody like a Blake Cashman to kind of intuit whatever thing that he's up to on that play, it makes the entire unit look bad. And now that, neither of them have to deal with that, they've got the ability to play really, really cohesive football, right? And so you end up with, Blake Cashman, obviously he played, pretty decently in coverage. I think he gave up 4 receptions for 16 total yards. That's exactly the kind of football the Vikings want. And then he played really outstandingly in the run game. And then you get Eric Wilson, who will occasionally overshoot plays. He'll be aggressive getting into the gaps, but not to the extent that Ivan Pace would be. And he doesn't kind of get out of his assignment like Ivan Pace does. And so I think that's it. I think it creates a level of predictability for the rest of the defense, which is, I think, the big reason. And I was kind of worried because those first 3 Saquon Barkley plays were all successful runs. And I was like, man, my whole thing the past couple of weeks is that when Blake Cashman comes back and when Harrison Smith plays a full complement of snaps, which he did, he played all the snaps, the run game will be substantially better. And the first 3 plays were all like these huge, it was 8 yards and then 3 yards on 2nd and 1, and then a 5 yard. And I was like, I'm wrong. That's never happened to me in my life. And then the rest of the run defense kind of clamped down, and it was really nice to see. And I think that was part of that was that Ivan Pace wasn't playing. I'm sure that they'll figure out roles for him going forward and stuff like that, the way that they do in 3 safety sets, and they'll do matchups and stuff like that. He's a very valuable player to have. But you've got 2 linebackers that know how to play linebacker. I think that's really good.
Yeah, I think they have to get him re-involved in the blitzes, even if he's not the guy winning or generating the pressure. They need to get him, occupy a guard with a linebacker, blow up that guard, push it back. It helps everybody else do their job. I think missing that, it had a lot to do with the pass rush problems we talked about earlier. But I'm also a little bit on trade watch. I mean, it's mid to late October, and you're suddenly getting starters with 0 reps. That's usually maybe we're negotiating. So I'm looking at that. But the real thought that I'm having here about this whole defensive depth chart is, does anybody on the Vikings know who their good players are? Because they seem really indecisive about this. They have Michael Jurgens as the backup center. Nope, it's Blake Brandel as the backup center. They have Justin School. Blake Brandel comes in at tackle, plays better. Did you know that could have happened? Javon Hargrave, 18 snaps in this game. Is he still a starter? I don't really think he is. I think Jalen Redmond is taking his job.
He's starting.
He gets his face on the screen.
A more involved player, and probably should be, but why didn't we know that week 1? And why didn't we make these? All of these guys were not in camp competitions and just were anointed their jobs without any real second thought to it. And here we are, not that far into the season. We're 6 games in, going, oh my God, look at our depth. We're making 5 different
Thielen gets shifted down the depth chart. Yep. We'll see what happens when Aaron Jones comes back. I'm guessing Jones takes his spot again.
The indecision is a little concerning from a self-scout perspective, that we seem very reactive to Blake Brandel played an okay game against the Browns. Let's put him in at center. As he's the backup now, and then it's a disaster. Do you know your players? Have you met them today?
I will say it's not that they anointed them necessarily in camp, otherwise Blake Brandel wouldn't have been the backup center. But but
Jurgens was anointed with no competition for that backup center job.
Sure, yeah. And maybe Huber should have had a little bit more.
Yeah, which they are now going back on. You were either wrong then or you're wrong now. What happened?
Yeah, which is interesting because they've been reporting that Jurgens had issues with snap exchanges, the whole camp. And it's okay, then maybe have somebody compete at that spot. Also, if that's the concern, right? I just don't know why you get somebody who hasn't played center ever, right? Not in high school, not in college, not in the NFL, until admittedly wasn't terrible against the Browns. But you can't use that 50 snap sample, right? To make that decision. Yeah,
True,
I
you
think
can't
that's
use 50 snap samples to make depth chart decisions. Super agree.
interesting. I see where you're going.
Ivan Pace, by the way, restricted free agent after the year. Easy bring back. His career doesn't have to be over here. But I think we might have been thinking this is an extension offseason for him, and it's not looking that way.
And now it's just a tender offseason.
Yeah, now
Like,
it's
hey,
yeah.
you don't got a choice.
Extend Jalen Redmond, though. Get that guy paid.
Yeah.
Good Lord, Jalen Redmond is playing outstanding ball.
He's really good. We've got betting results and the Los Angeles Chargers coming up on Thursday. A little preview of that game due up next on the Squad Show. Brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel makes the game more interesting. New customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if they win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, win it, get $300. And you can use those bets all across the app. Yesterday, I got the Addison over, did not get the Barkley over. That was a big whiff. I, however, can try again next week with the same game parlay, live wagering options. Still got a futures bet, which also isn't looking the best because the Vikings are in last in the division. I need them to be first. But still, if you're a casual fan or you love deep diving, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app today and get started. Julia Daniels, who gets the Care 11 trip on Thursday? Is that a Reggie Wilson venture?
I don't believe we're going.
You can watch Care 11 News though and get all the highlights.
I may be a liar. I don't think we're going though. I don't think that's happening.
No Will?
Not going to Broadcasters Paradise?
No Reg?
No, I don't think so. Unless I missed something completely.
You could hire Luke as a stringer, right? You could just have him. He lives
Luke
there.
Braun. Yeah, you don't realize this, Julia. Luke Braun's he's there. He's in LA area.
Oh yeah.
He's under the network umbrella. It's all it's all Tegna.
Get on over there.
He's got it.
I will be there.
Obscene fee though. Yeah, he will be there.
I will be there as a fan in that capacity.
I'll throw in a live shot for you if you want to do one.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds great.
Let's talk.
Let's talk. Yeah. I don't think that they're going to that one. I know I'm not going, and that's all that really matters in my mind.
That's unfortunate.
I'm just kidding.
Like many Chargers fans not going to the Chargers game.
Ooh.
Braun, you usually you go to most LA games, right?
Yeah.
What's the give me a vibe check, like Chargers Nation versus Rams Nation.
It's a
Rams town.
It's a Raiders
Dodgers
town.
Well, right now it's a Dodgers town.
It's a Dodgers.
There's
It's a Lakers
very little
town.
football. Nobody's paying attention to football in LA.
Go
right now.
Doyers.
It's the Dodgers. But LA is primarily a baseball city. I think if you did have to pick a football team, I'm not joking. You see more Raiders stuff around just because of the old timey 70s stuff. But it's definitely more Rams than Chargers if we're just comparing those two. Mm-hmm. When I went to the Thursday night Rams game last year, I would say it was like 60-40 Rams. Like it was a home game still for the Rams, but there was quite a bit of purple in the stands. I have yet to be to a Chargers game where it didn't feel like a home game. Maybe this one will be though. There's more hype.
Soccer stadium.
I was at the one, Fadio Denebo with a scoop and score.
Yeah,
I thought the Vikings.
That was a
Vikings
home game.
That was a great. that was a 19,
game.
And that was like during the Vikings' super hot streak. But then I think they went back and Zimmer won there in like 21 against rookie Herbert.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The unjust offensive rookie of the year. Yeah.
I found myself between a couple of extremely frustrated Chargers fans. It was very fun. That was a good time. They were funny.
Have to be if you're a Chargers fan, right?
Yeah, they were like in the gallows. It was great.
So I guess the question leading up to this game, and it's all the quarterback, and it's what is owed to JJ McCarthy? Like what benefits him most? Is it getting him a multiple week stretch of practice where he's at 100%? And how does that coalesce with doing the organization a disservice by throwing out Carson Wentz, who may not be able to operate this offense well enough? Do you owe it to the organization to try JJ McCarthy if he's better than 75% healthy and able to practice in full? Like what is owed here? I think that's the big question. And if anyone wants to jump, Arif, go ahead.
Doesn't it depend on McCarthy's feedback on his like pain levels and stuff like that? If like that's the kind of dominating force in determining whether or not he's getting practice reps and determining whether, which like there's practice reps on a short week, like that's not really going to be kind of an overriding concern. But like that's the issue, right? Like whether or not he feels comfortable moving, because I think we're at a point where the upside play for McCarthy is pretty viable, even if from a production standpoint, Wentz has been better, right? Like I think that making sure that you can throw to the fullback in the flat and spider 2-wide banana is important, right? Like that's why you call that play. So it's really just that question, right? Like I think that if he's healthy, he plays. If he's got the ability to operate throughout practice, he plays. But I am really curious about the O'Connell statement from last week that they want a full week of practice when that's just not going to be possible, right? So I wonder if it is structurally impossible for the guy who didn't start this week to play next week just because of the short week. And I do want to, when McCarthy plays, do want to put him in a situation where he is enabled to succeed, as opposed to one where he doesn't get a ton of time with this offense. He is working with a new center for him, I guess, which is important, right? And he needs to kind of reestablish what the timing looks like with Jordan Addison and stuff like that. It's kind of difficult to do that with like one day of practice.
Yeah, Julia, I've been bothered by the transparency with this whole thing. I get that teams are evasive. I understand that. But they've moved the goalpost back, it seems like, every couple of weeks. We were teased that McCarthy might play in London. And now it's looking.
Schefter said it was always 6 weeks. It was always 6 weeks.
Yeah, Schefter, he got a community note on that tweet that he put out.
Of his own tweet, I bet.
So
yeah, and I'm sure you. I mean, Julia, you're at the press conferences, right? Like you're like that's your day to day. I'm sure you've got all the receipts of like all the conflicting things that have been said about his recovery.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 2 weeks to start, right? 2 weeks, and then it was maybe we could push it to 4, and now we're, it's just, here's my perspective, and this may sound a little harsh. The most important thing for JJ McCarthy right now is experience in these games, and he's not getting it. The only way JJ McCarthy is going to get better, and I agree with you guys in saying like his ceiling is higher than Carson Wentz. He has the potential to be a better quarterback. He's not going to get there if he's not on the field. And I'm not a doctor, but I will say, like I was telling Sam this last week, my dad is an orthopedic surgeon. He knows all about this stuff. He's told me high ankle sprains are sometimes worse. Sometimes it's better to just break your ankle completely instead of having a high ankle sprain, because it's going to continue to bother you. It's going to continue to be painful. However, and again, I'm not a doctor here, but it's like, how much discomfort can you deal with to get out there and be better for your team? It's like take the balance of that. And I understand like listening to trainers, but I feel like we would have gotten different comments from Kevin O'Connell if it was more so like, we're going to wait and see what the trainer said, instead of saying like, well, we think and he didn't say this word for word, but my interpretation of what he said last week when talking about who's going to start was, JJ got all these reps at practice this week. He had a ton of reps at practice, but he's not comfortable with where he's at in terms of the pain level. And we didn't hear, I'm somebody who's listened to Kevin O'Connell talk about training staff all the time. And when they're generally relying on what the training staff has to say instead of the player, usually the answer we get from Kevin O'Connell is, yeah, we're going to have to talk to the trainers and see what they say about this. We're going to have to leave it to the experts to see what they say about this. That wasn't the answer that he gave us when we were talking about who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings this week. It was just all about where JJ McCarthy's comfort level is. And so to me, it's like, I'm kind of at that point where I'm thinking like, dude, just get out there. Like, just get out there.
Buck up.
I kind of want to say that. Like, suck it up a little bit. Like, you've had weeks.
This child.
I don't know if it's mean or not, but it's just like at this point, dude.
No, I think
I think you're super right.
I think it's totally fair. I mean,
it's totally fair.
He's doing a
It's really
disservice
funny.
to himself and his team by not just getting out there, getting the experience. Yeah, you're gonna fail. You're 22 years old. You're gonna fail, and you're gonna go out but go learn. You can't get that experience literally anywhere else.
really important lesson for all 22-year-olds out there, by the way. You will fail.
It's super true.
There's probably then I guarantee this is part of it. Like Kevin O'Connell is so passionate about not failing young quarterbacks, maybe to a fault, right? Like maybe.
But he
to the
doesn't do
point,
that with the veterans that he brings in. He's like, get out there, do it again.
We said it all off season. There's going to have to be some learning on the job, and it was a little bit painful in the first 2 weeks. There's also some good stuff there. Good stuff there in the Bears tape. I mean, I just want to see it again, and I think it's got to be. And so if it's not the Chargers, then it has to be what, the Lions. After that
would be next. Yeah.
think
If it's not the Lions, then he's just benched.
Yeah,
Easier.
if it's not the Lions,
he's
If it's
benched,
not the
right?
Lions, then they're just going with Wentz. But
Well,
like,
so
this
I
is
would-
a little bit of a Wentz question. Like it's the whole thing with Wentz and any backup is the difference between like surviving and thriving, right? If you're thriving with the backup, he becomes the starter. That's Sam Darnold. You were thriving, right? And you have these
Case
long-term
Keenum,
conversations.
you were thriving.
You were thriving, right? You're sticking with the hot hand. If you're just surviving, which is what they're doing now, right? They're calling a truncated playbook. They're moving the ball a little bit. They're finding their way, but it's super limited and it's super narrow. The ways that they can actually like attack defenses. But it's working okay enough to be surviving and to have an offense that isn't, whatever happened. Well, I can't even say Dylan Gabriel anymore because like he hung one on the Dolphins. So I would pick your bad defense.
That
Like
team
it's not
played.
that, right?
We're not counting that.
Okay, good. But because this last game had so many of these bad moments that just ruin all the goodwill you build up from all the other production that led to those red zone trips, I feel like it does put more pressure on JJ McCarthy to do what Julia's saying, to suck it up and get out there. When you're coming off a Browns game and Wentz just threw the game-winning touchdown, you go, hey, we don't need to be in a hurry about this. You're not playing well enough, at least in my opinion. We're not doing the long-term thing, but we're not rushing the guy back because the backup is so bad. Well, this time the backup was that bad when Julia's talking about Max Brosmer and she's not alone. Now you're going, okay.
And
I thought about it.
Yeah.
Like it's not a hot, that's not like she's not on an island, right? And with that in your head now, you're going, okay, JJ McCarthy on 90% of an ankle, maybe the footwork isn't quite there and we want to make sure that's right. And it's all, but now there's a little more urgency and that urgency hits you on a short week. And I think that makes this a different kind of decision. O'Connell did say on the podium after the game that like it did matter that he got practices this week, that he got a lot of reps.
And the bye week, he did work too. He did
work in the bye
grass.
week. Yeah. So like he did say that
stuff
stuff did matter. And so I will like the short week of it all is, I think, mitigated by the fact that he has been working a little bit. He's not going from zero. We'll see, but I mean, Schefter and Rappaport both reported that he's not really expected to play. So I kind of need to see him be a full participant and hear something new to kind of change my expectation.
I'll wait for the local beat breaking news on this one. The national.
That is super true.
Disaster.
Watch for Seifert and Alec Lewis. We got to roll. I'll just say that, I mean, Carson Wentz is playing through pain and got beat up in that game as well. Like JJ McCarthy may be the healthier of the two options, and he's coming off of 2 weeks being on the grass. This would be a third week of him getting some practice time, and he would have had to do the short week thing if he was healthy. Like your second-year quarterback, you're going to have to play on a short week. I don't think this needs to be a coddling situation for fear of shattering confidence.
Fear is the word.
Yeah,
this is a different kind of fear-based culture.
I do want to add that it is really interesting that fans haven't jumped on the pain management element because they super jumped on Christian Ponder when he literally had compartment syndrome, right? When his arm was about to be
he had bursitis?
Yeah.
His arm was just purple.
Yeah. And so, like, fans talk a lot about toughness, but it's obviously modulated by, like, kind of what our expectations for the quarterback are. And after the 2012 season, not a ton of people had a lot of patience for Ponder, but it is interesting, right? Like, and at some point, like, yeah, you're going to have to play at 80%, 90%. And obviously I have a lot of problems with Carson Wentz. I've made that known. But, like, if there is one thing about him, is that he does play through a lot of pain. Now, sometimes he'll tell you about that and maybe relax, but he does play through a lot of pain, and it doesn't look good that maybe McCarthy is a little bit more hesitant about that, which I hesitate to call any player soft because I couldn't do any of that, right? But given the expectations of the position, that is an important consideration.
Very much enjoyed Julia Daniels' performance on today's Monday Squad show. She'll be back on Wednesday, and Reggie Wilson and Ron Johnson will be there as well. Julia, short notice, showing up and joining this circus.
Yeah, unlike a certain quarterback.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's her Dobbs sanity moment.
Yeah, this is great. This is fantastic.
That was a lot of fun. That's Luke Braun, Locked on Vikings, Arif Hasan, Wide Left Substack, Julia Daniels, catcher on Care 11, and I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thank you for watching, listening, commenting, and subscribing. We'll talk to you next time.